There's only one person who can save the enchanted world. Dorothy.
Dorothy Gale?
I thought you'd be taller.
Legends of Oz.
Dorothy Gale of Kansas is summoned back to the land of Oz to combat a new foe known as the Jester. On this journey, she is joined by Wiser the Owl, the China Princess, and Marshall Mallow. I've neither read the books nor watched the trailer for this movie, so I went in almost totally blind, which was a nice experience for once. Then again, if I had watched the trailer for this movie, I might have had second thoughts about seeing it. The good. Martin Short plays the Jester, and he puts a lot of energy in this role, as well as having a few decent funny lines from time to time. Toto's in this movie, and he does a bunch of cute dog stuff, which is kinda nice. Wow, I haven't had this little good to say about a movie since Planes. The iffy. The animation in this movie is a bit subpar in the sense that it sort of looks like a video game cutscene. On the plus side, it does look like a cutscene taken from a game with good graphics. The way this movie's story progresses makes it feel a good deal similar to the original Wizard of Oz story. For the most part, it feels coincidental and not that important. For other parts, it feels a little too similar to the Oz story and repetitious for it. This film is an animated musical. I will admit, it's nice to see a company that's not Disney doing one of these. But most of the songs in this movie sound like they come out of Glee, High School Musical, or ABC Family territory. And given that Lea Michele from Glee plays Dorothy in this movie, that makes perfect sense. Despite that, the songs aren't bad. They're just highly forgettable. The bad. Despite a cast of some pretty talented actors, the biggest failure in this movie is its characters. Mostly in the way they're written. The original Oz trio, the Lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man, are devoid of very interesting personalities and are defined by the courage, heart, and brains that they were given by the wizard at the end of the original story. I will give the movie props for giving Dorothy different characters to interact with, as it really does help avoid the retread factor that I said was already quite present in this movie. But Marshall Mallow is defined by his occupation and the dedication he has to it, and is not very interesting. China Princess is vain, self-centered, and not a very enjoyable character to watch for most of the movie, and Wiser is basically a ripoff of Owl from Winnie the Pooh. Except I like Owl from Winnie the Pooh. Dorothy, on the other hand, is a character who's always been pretty plain, and is not a terrible character in her own right, but in the right of how she's treated by the other characters. She's hailed for the two wicked witches that she's killed in the original Oz story, despite the fact that she did both on accident. She accepts this daring quest and shows some resourcefulness along the way, but she's expected to save the day from the Jester now, and it doesn't seem like she has any extraordinary capabilities even though everyone expects her to. What's worse is that there seems to be a little hint in the movie that she does have these extraordinary capabilities, but the movie does a poor job of explaining it. Then there's the Jester, who has a physical manifestation in both the land of Oz and in Kansas. The Jester from Oz seems to have motivations for why he does what he does that are kind of confused, while his manifestation in Kansas seems to have no clear motivation at all except because he's evil. Glinda the Good Witch is basically her usual self, but not only does she hardly get to do anything in this movie, but she's played by Bernadette Peters and doesn't even get a song. And then there's the wonderful Wizard of Oz himself. He's not in this movie. It gets even more painful when these characters start to become logic deficient. As Dorothy goes along her journey, she hits a few speed bumps and gets into trouble in a few places, but the instant that her name is known to these people, her reputation as a witch slayer instantly gets her off scot-free. Which begs the question, after that happened the first time, why didn't Dorothy just make sure she did that everywhere else she went? And then there's a pathetic attempt at an emotional moment that becomes void because of logic already established in the movie. The verdict? With a lot of forgettable elements and the memorable elements being kind of dumb, this Return to Oz was rather uninspired. Most of my problems with it are specific moments, but as a big picture, all I have to say is the movie doesn't really have that much to offer. What it does have to offer is enough fodder for me to do a detective review on it someday. This is Detective Steve, and even if you didn't like Oz the Great and Powerful, you'll probably go a little easier on it after you watch this movie.